As an artist today, you have to reflect the time. There's this idea of, it's not literature if it's on the screen, but of course it is. You have to make poetry and literature available to everybody, and the problem with it just being in books or printed material is that's changing. I have to say, like, Instagram, for as much as it has its difficult things about it, and it's been great for me because it's given me whole, global audiences.
Yrsa Daley-Ward, she's a British writer, poet and model known for her captivating and deeply personal works. Next to me is Greg Pouy. I'm super happy to have you again also. So this is going to be a co-interview or a trio podcast.
We walked until we could walk no more, counting our steps and thinking of death. It's always likely. There's so much poison. There's so much world stuff taking us down. I think that every single thing we go through, all of the difficulty, is something that sharpens you in another venue, in another area. So everything that I've gone through, even things that I think are too shameful or too alienating to talk about, when I get the courage to talk about it and share it and it helps someone else, I'm like, this was the reason.
What's the reaction of your close one when they read a poem you write on them?
I think the beauty of telling your story in certain ways can actually be liberating for yourself and for everyone involved. And it's in the way you tell it as well.
What is your relationship with letting go, I guess?
When you have too much baggage, it's just harder to move and you feel it. You feel limited.
Totally.
And I do it because I know that I can't go further unless it happens.
Hello and welcome to Kaplankaya on the southwestern Aegean coast of Turkey. We are recording the podcast, the Harvest series, where we interview amazing speakers, practitioners and artists joining the Harvest Summit. I hope you will enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to the Harvest Series podcast. We are in Kaplankaya and our guest today is Yrsa Daley-Ward. She's a British writer, poet and model known for her captivating and deeply personal works. Born in England to a Jamaican mother and Nigerian father, she has drawn from a multicultural background and personal experiences to explore themes of identity, race, sexuality and mental health in her writing. Next to me is Greg Pouy. I'm super happy to have you again also. So this is going to be a co-interview or a trio podcast with Greg from the podcast Vlan. If you don't know it, I would really suggest, if you speak French, but you have few episodes in English.
A few episodes in English, like this one we're doing today.
Yeah, exactly. And the one last year with Jason Silva.
Totally.
Okay, cool. So I'm very happy to have you both here in Kaplankaya and on this podcast in the villa. I will remind the name of your last poetry collection, Bone, that was published in 2014.
Yes, originally 2014 and then republished in 2017. Yes.
Yeah. What changes did you make in between?
Well, I got a publisher. So initially,
that's cool.
It was self-published, and then a few years later, Penguin came and they said, "Can we republish this with another book?" And I said, "Yeah." And so just added a few more poems, and then it went out again.
Nice.
Yes.
Great. To a new audience.
Yes, completely new.
Do you think you could start for the listeners and watchers by reading or not reading, telling a poem?
Yes, I feel like I'm going to do a poem called We'll Be Fine. And it's a love poem. And it's one I wrote at the beginning of the pandemic. I was in this long distance relationship. And it goes like this. I know that I love you. You go walking every morning beneath the trees when much of the city is sleeping and preparing for more of the same. Walls, information, terror, doubt. You tell me the sky is on a kind of holiday, deep breathing, pink and still. You talk about the sun, so low and tender you can stare it in the eye. The flowers are still showing up for work. I know that I love you. Everything around us whispers. It is up to us what we hear. I think that when this time is over and we are almost nearly remembering all of this, you will be so full up of all the raw living beauty you have so diligently collected every morning, and the world will have turned, heaving with all of its newest learnings. I think there is gorgeous anarchy in not knowing exactly where this will take us. I worry and you worry, but here we are. Right now, all there is to do is live.
Nice, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
What is your relation with letting go, I guess? This is the best question after this.
I
right?
love that. Yes, it has been a life of letting go. And I really treat that as a religion, you know, because I think as important as it is to have so many experiences and varied and wide experiences, it's also important to be able to identify the old things that we have no need for anymore. You know, the limiting behaviors and the just old beliefs, old neural pathways, just unnecessary things which were useful once but aren't useful anymore. So I'm constantly like trying to hone who I am, you know, taking bits off that were beautiful, but now, you know, I'm different. So letting go is like my religion.
And how do you do that? I mean, do you have? How did you came up? Because for a lot of people, me including, I guess, it's very hard to let go.
Yeah. I mean, I think I see it as something that's almost necessary. It's like when you have too much baggage, it's just harder to move, and you feel it. You feel limited.
Totally.
You know, you feel like something's got to give. So it's like a means of survival doing so. And I do it because I know that I can't go further unless it happens.
And also because you travel a lot.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
used
always
to...
traveling. Yes, and I'm a light traveler too, I'll tell you. So that helps as well.
I had a question about, do you know all your poems by heart?
You know, I used to, and now I write poems every week. So now it's just growing in size. Now there's hundreds and hundreds. So I think if I really was forced to, like someone had a knife to me, I'd probably remember. But now I don't put as much pressure on myself to remember everything because there's just too many, and it's growing.
What did you call the book bone? It is because it is raw and
Yes.
the structure, yeah?
Exactly, because it's right in there. It's stuff that's right in there. Again, some of that stuff needed to go. And what was true then is not true now. But it was something from inside, like deep within. Yeah.
Nice.
When did you start writing poems?
Oh my God. You know, I was lucky enough to be raised on poetry. I was actually raised on biblical verses that went into me. I had a very strict grandparent who raised me. And I just learned from that and learned from the books that I was read to so much as a child, which is why I love to read. Roald Dahl, Spike Milligan, all these people, all of this, even Shakespeare. So it was in me already. So I've been writing since I could read, which was very young, like 2, 3.
And as we were driving here, I was asking you why poem compared to novels. Also because I was quoting and I said, I don't remember the writer, but I didn't write you long letters because I didn't write you short letters because I didn't have time to do it.
Yeah,
it's hard.
It takes. It's a different type of writing. I do write novels too, but this is. I don't know. There's something about the economy of language which I think is really cool. You know, to give. Why say 100 words when I can say 10? You know, in an intentional way.
With your question. It's going to be very naive, but for me, when we learned poetry at school, it was with rhymes. And so this is not something, rhymes, that matters for you. What's your definition of what matters for you? What qualifies poetry for you? Modern poetry.
Feel like for it to feel resonant. To whoever comes across it in different ways. And sometimes I write poems that rhyme and sometimes I don't. And I really don't think I get to control that. You know, I really feel like the vessel, it sounds strange, like something esoteric, but honestly, like I sit there and let it come through. I don't sit there and think of myself and like really do it in a really purposeful way. I kind of sit there and just clear myself and then allow myself to be used for whatever it is that gives you the words.
So you're not too much in your mind.
No way. Because I would ruin it. Like I would be, you know, I think the ego or the self too much. When that gets in the way, you start to doubt what you do. And this is not the space to doubt. This is the space to be wild.
Yeah.
This is the space to be open. So that's where I go. That's why I'm so addicted to it, because I don't have to think too much.
And connected to our question, do you feel like constraint, like rhythm, helped the creativity, or it's actually swallowed it a little bit?
In what sense?
It means that when you're trying to do rhythm, it is a constraint somehow. And for a lot of creative people, constraint are helping them to be creative because they need
Sometimes.
those burdens.
Yeah, you need the bones of something, otherwise it can go anywhere. So there's something about rhythm. And maybe it's my origin. I'm half Jamaican, half Nigerian. The rhythm is so important to us. It's in us. So of course, something helps me to like form the words as well. And sometimes I'm writing to music. I have music with no lyrics, and it helps me, whether I'm writing a novel or a poem, it helps me feel. And so I can get the thing out.
Do you say in poems things that you wouldn't say to people?
Absolutely. Oh my God. I'm very introvert. I'm shy. I'm not,
really?
Yes. We were
I
saying,
can tell. We were discussing that.
We're
Really?
one-on-one.
We are both like
Okay.
that.
Yes, one-on-one people, not a big group. But this place is a place where I can just let it free, and I love it. I love it. It's a place where I can just say whatever I want to say. And as a kid, the reason why I liked it so much was I come from a very strict household. So you couldn't say something to the elders. If they tell you something, that's it. You have to do it. But when I wrote, I could say anything, and they didn't I didn't get into trouble. They didn't tell me off. They were just like, "Oh, this is a great poem," and so the freedom was there.
Oh.
Yes.
Mental health hygiene.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, that's what it is.
So writing is freeing you somehow.
Oh God, all the time, every day. That's why I do it. I'm very quiet in everyday life, but this is where I come with my truth.
So you would recommend to anyone to write, even if it's not poem, maybe it's just a journal, but just
Yes.
writing, helping release pain, anger, whatever you go through.
Absolutely. I teach a lot of workshops on not just writing, but creativity in general and reframing your mind. And a big part of that is what I call writing into the unsayable. So all of these things that you think, but afraid to say, or not being honest, or saying yes when you really want to say no, go away. All of these things in your private journals, when you write, you come face to face with things that really surprise you and change your life.
Do you write, Greg?
So I wrote a book, and I write a newsletter, and I write for magazines. But I don't write for myself. I don't journal.
Not your soul.
But
you're not
I
freeing your soul.
I shoot
okay.
journals. I only do it when I'm feeling like a deep dive down. But
Exactly. I'm the
otherwise-
same. Like I'm only writing when it's like when the cup is too full.
Yes,
Yeah.
And it works for you, right? Do you see things that surprise you?
so
It does. it
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
Are you familiar with the book, The Creative Act? It's Robbins. I think?
Yes, I have it. I have it at home. Someone bought it for me a month ago.
It's
I'm
amazing,
like,
right?
It is, and you can just dip into it and find gems.
And what he's saying is that creativity is a way of living. It's not something. Nobody is creative. It's a way of living. You can be creative by cooking, by writing, by doing like talking to someone. It's a creative act also. And because you were talking about creative workshops, and I was wondering, how do you help people understand that creativity is not a job? It is something we all have in us, in the way you behave.
I like to tell people it's something you step into, and you must, because we are designers. We have to design our life. Like the life that you are standing in is something of your own building. Whatever happened to you, whatever you're trying to get through, you are making this thing. So you are the creator. So when you know that, you're like, oh wow, what can I be doing today to like move my life in the way that I want it to be? So it's just really freedom, teaching people that they have agency.
What are the blocks you notice in people?
Sorry,
That's
I
the
was
same.
gonna- I was gonna ask the
This
same
question.
questions.
Okay, perfect. What are the blocks of people usually most of the time when you teach them?
So much of it is fear about, first of all, it not being perfect. Well, what's perfect? None of my books are perfect. I'm always trying to get closer to the thing in the
Perfectionism,
next one and the next one. And
Yeah.
it's like I'll write another poem, but I'd rather deliver an imperfect poem than something it will never be perfect. It should be something you're always moving to. But also, the fear of what people will say. the fear that they might not be good enough, the fear of time, like, do I have enough time? Can I really call myself a writer? And women more than men really get this, can I really do this?
Of legitimacy.
Is it good enough? Those things are the things that get in the way.
Actually, on that, I had an interesting reading which was, don't focus on the common name, focus on the verb. Don't wonder, am I a writer? Wonder, am I writing?
Right. Oh, that's so great.
That's a good,
I love
good
that.
one.
I love that too. And I think as long as you're writing, you're a writer.
Of course.
If you paint, it's the same.
Yeah, and again, you can step into it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's not as complicated it's as simple as that, let's say.
Yeah, it's true.
Have you always, even if an introvert, have as a child, the self-confidence? Because I think it asks a lot of self-confidence to be able to publish what you're thinking, your thoughts. And have you always been like this?
I think in some ways, yes. As a storyteller or as somebody who something flows through, yes. And the reason why I have self-confidence in that is because I don't think it's all from me. I think that I don't know what, but I think it's from something else, and creatives or artists just make themselves available, and then the thing goes through them.
Like a vessel.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
so that's why I feel confident in it, I don't wrap it too much into my identity of myself, because that's always changing.
I was going to ask where you find your inspiration, but if you're a vessel, it's just life.
It's
basically.
just, and nature and everything that you soften and you let yourself be used in that way.
And actually, in a sense, what differentiates what we call artists and normal people is this capacity of being, of letting go, what you just explained at the beginning, but also being vulnerable,
Completely.
and open up to everyone.
Yeah.
Try.
Yeah. And there's some sensitivities that come with that are also hard, but I wouldn't change it.
Yeah. Have you spent a lot of time thinking about your trauma, and would you mind to share them so we can understand more your poetry?
I'm not someone who sits and thinks about that, but I am somebody who, I go down to write, I start writing something, and maybe a story will come from back then that I don't even know that I remember. There are so many things that I pull on from early life that I consider them normal because it's me. But then somebody reading them might say, "Oh my God, how did you get through that?" And really, I think it's just, we are designed a certain way, and maybe it's supposed to come out through storytelling and not necessarily sitting and thinking of it so much. So I think I benefit from using it as an artist. And I think that every single thing we go through, all of the difficulty, is something that sharpens you in another venue, in another area. So everything that I've gone through, even things that I think are too shameful or too alienating to talk about, when I get the courage to talk about it and share it, and it helps someone else, I'm like, oh, this was the reason. Mm-hmm. This was the reason, and we grew up with a lot of difficulty and being not with our parents and being raised by grandparents. And we were also raised in very strict religion for a time. And then we went back to our parents, and all of this maybe difference of housing and space just really taught us skills in other areas, being with very different types of people, having to negotiate new places where we knew no one, growing up in a very white place where we were the only Black people, all of that. I used to wonder, what is the meaning of this? And now as I get older, I realize that it falls into place.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you say that the goal, not of your life, but probably of what you do, it is your life somehow, is to help people going through whatever they're experiencing? It's
got to be, I think, God, when I'm having difficult times, the thing that gets me back on track is you can't identify too deeply with, oh, this happened or this happened to me. You have to think of this is an act of service. What can I do? And then when I realize I can be useful, then I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Thank God there's a reason for this. Yeah.
Do you think it's part of your success, people identifying to you?
Yeah, I think that's true of anybody who wants to do what I do or wants to write. People love art because it's a bridge to the soul, from my soul to yours. And that's why we love it, whether it's a painting or a piece of music or a piece of art. We need it. We need to identify with each other. We need that connection. So yes, I think that's what people respond to.
And you were talking about being a black woman. Since I'm from West Indies also, my mom at least.
Oh wow, yeah.
Martinique, not
Martinique.
It's a different
wow.
island though.
Yeah.
How do you feel women of color are accepted in the writing sphere, let's say?
I think now it is, it's always changing. It's always changing, and I think that I definitely see more women of color, and there are so many women of color writers that I love, and there are definitely more. When I was growing up, actually, in the town where in the city was, I didn't read anything by anybody who looked like me. So everything I learned at a young age was people who didn't look like me at all, and I'm glad that is changing in publishing and also outside of publishing. It
is so important because as a young person, you need to identify yourself to someone. And if you have no one to identify to, then it's more complicated.
Yeah, and you can't, or you shouldn't only see success in somebody that looks completely different to you. But there's something about the diversity of stories. When you read enough diverse stories, you see that we're all alike, and that's what we need to understand more.
We go through the same experiences. Go ahead.
So you're living in the US. Do you feel more like an American now,
or
British?
Or it's hard for me to identify as any of those things. I guess you would say British because that's where I was born and brought up. But because I've lived in so many different places now, I feel like I'm just gathering
layers.
Gathering layers, which is beautiful.
Actually, Tai was talking about multi-local.
Yes.
Maybe it resonates with you.
Yeah, it does deeply. Yes.
We are all multi-local.
We are, yeah.
We live in different places where we were born.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You too.
Wait.
Yeah. And it's an invitation to be even more of yourself everywhere you go.
Yeah.
You can be like,
Take off the mask.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
About the modern poetry, you are embracing the new technologies like Instagram.
Yes.
So I find it like it's real shift from poets like we used to see them before. What's the impact on the social network for you, and how do you deal with them? Are you sometimes watching the comments? How is it helpful and not helpful in a way?
Okay, so it's helpful because I have to say, like, Instagram, for as much as it has its difficult things about it, and it's been great for me because it's given me whole global audiences, and I'm so happy. People a lot of the time, they're very there's this idea of, it's not literature if it's on the screen, but of course it is. You have to make poetry and literature available to everybody, and the problem with it just being in books or printed material is that's changing.
Yeah, and nobody's
less people
buying them
that.
anymore. Yeah,
but then now there's been this surge of poetry. Now more people are buying poetry books, so I love it, and I think as an artist today, you have to reflect the times, and you also have to use these. You don't have to, but I think to get global audiences and to reach people who would really love poetry, who wouldn't get to see it. Sometimes you need to stretch into like a mode you would never use, technology.
To go where they are.
Yeah.
How would you explain, or how do you understand that poetry is rising these days?
How would you
explain, or how do you understand that? You said that poetry is more and more.
Yeah. Well, I think there is like very snobbishness sometimes with what is literature and what isn't. And it's almost like you don't really have to prove yourself, you use your truth in the manner that you know and can spread your words, whether it's an Instagram quote or a piece of your poetry, and hope it resonates, or you record yourself, or you record your voice. Sometimes I do that on my newsletter. And you do whatever you feel, and you just don't know who it will reach. And I think you take that chance. And then whoever it's for will hear it and they'll resonate, and maybe it'll inspire them to tell their story in whatever way.
Do you feel it's important that people come out with their stories, that more and more people express what they've been through?
I think for a lot of people it would free them, because then they can move on and be something else. We don't have to stay in this story. But when you start telling your story, sometimes you're free to be the new thing now. Yeah.
And also, one of the points of storytelling is, what is the story you're telling yourself about yourself?
Right.
And you need to change that.
For sure.
And for you, writing help you to change your storytelling for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the letting
Kind
go.
of reframing also.
For sure. I have a memoir called The Terrible, and it's about my early life. It's actually in French. It's La Vie Précieuse. It's been translated.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it's a story. It's gritty and it's difficult. It's a story that's not me anymore. But in the time when I wrote it, that was important then. And, maybe it will help people.
A question, because we mentioned this just before the podcast. You're talking about your father or your close one in a beautiful poem that you read on the beach.
Yes.
I don't know if you would like to read another poem now about this. And my question after about this is, maybe one of the block about writing and liberating yourself is this kind of loyalty to your parents or to your close one, and you don't want to hurt anyone, and so you don't want to
Yeah.
You see what I mean on that?
Yeah. I see what you mean.
And you don't want to write, and that's a block. And so like, okay, so I'm going to move on. I'm not going to think about this. But so what's the reaction of your close one when they read a poem you write on them? And maybe you can read one and then explain.
Okay,
read one.
Tell
us one. Yeah.
Yes, the poem that you're talking about, the poem is called Poetry, and it's the reason why I write in the first place. And it goes like this. No one is saying anything at the dinner table tonight because everyone is too angry. The only noise is the sound of fine silver on bone china and other people's children playing outside. But this will give you poetry. There is no knife in the kitchen sharp enough to cut the tension, and your grandmother's hands are shaking. The meat and yam stick in your throat, and you do not dare even to whisper, please pass the salt. But this will give you poetry. Your father is breathing out of his mouth. He is set to beat the spark out of you tonight for reasons he isn't even sure of himself yet. You will come away bruised. You will come away bruised. But this will give you poetry. The bruising will shatter. The bruising will shatter into black diamond. No one will sit beside you in class. Maybe your life will work. Most likely it won't at first, but that will give you poetry. And that poem is really to illustrate the fact that whatever happens in your life can be used, can be alchemized for your highest and best, your own story. And in answer to your question, I think the beauty of telling your story in certain ways can actually be liberating for yourself and for everyone involved. And it's in the way you tell it as well. So I like to say that in my novels and in my stories, I look at everybody with a very loving lens. So even when I'm talking about what happened and what this person did and this person did, it's not told with any... hopefully with no judgment on it. It's just the facts. I think for a lot of people this is difficult, and for a lot of people, quite understandably, they don't want to reveal facts about other people because maybe they think it's not their story to tell. I think the goal or the responsibility of the artist is to reflect truth, and sometimes that's difficult for people, and I really understand that. I have some feelings about that. So I'll say that a lot of the people that are mentioned in my work are no longer living. Like, I lost my parents young, and that's part of my journey. That's part of my story. And it might be the reason why I write so freely about it. But I think there's also ways to record stories about people that are living by approaching it with grace, and love and fairness. So that's what I try to do.
But also it can be, talking about your parents, it's also remembering them and honoring them somehow.
They had a journey too. They had a story too, and much difficulty. And I want to honor that all the time. Yeah.
You're talking about the bruising? What kind of bruising was
Well, I mean, you know, the shadow that sometimes appears on your life when you have these early memories. And also, you know, when you're brought up in certain ways, some of the conditioning that happens, some of the ways that you have to learn to love yourself, because perhaps the people, your caregivers, maybe the way that they love you or tried to love you affects the way you love and try to love. So when I think about bruising, I think about something, I think about a pattern, I think about a shape, and it does shape you, but it's also something that can be attended to and looked at, and it's the way we tell stories. It's what adds color to our life and helps us empathize with other human beings.
When I'm listening to you, I think of an armor, you know, not even an armor, but something that shaped you at the beginning, like a porcelain thing. And then you can change the shape.
Yes.
And we are free to change the shape. Actually, we're not like strictly in that. We were born like that, but then, or raised like that, but then we can free ourselves.
That's so true. That's a great analogy. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, it's not completely solid. It's like a guide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is a bit solid though. I mean, we have belief and systems, so they are there, it's true.
Yeah.
But you can work on them also. You can be aware of them, just being aware.
Sure, yeah. And some of them are useful. Even today I find myself battling with some aspects of things I've been taught, and I'm like, okay, so that is maybe not true, but then their discipline that I was taught is the thing that I can still use, like in my writing. Even to have a writing practice, you need discipline to write books. You have to, or it won't get written.
Is this one of the advice you would give someone that want to go into poetry? Have discipline, even if you don't, even if you're not inspired, just write every day.
That's what I would say. And make it fun, make it free, make it like a date. I always say show up, even if just for 10 minutes, to kiss your work, to look at it. You don't have to sit there like, oh my God, this is terrible, for hours, but just have a relationship with it so that it knows that you trust it. Treat it like a being, I say, on its journey, but like really nurture it. It's important.
I was thinking of a thing like, usually people, you know, when they go through a breakup, a nice thing to think about is that it's a chance to have a relationship to yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think like writing, I don't know if you can have a relationship to your writing, but at least you have a relationship to yourself when you're writing.
Yeah, I think it's
a chance.
I think it's really important, and you shouldn't give it up for anything. Yeah.
When you mention, I love when you mention kissing. I think that's a wonderful
Analogy.
thing. Yeah, especially I think probably when it's hard and it costs you, and kissing what you write is beautiful. You're also having T-shirts and hats.
Yeah.
I saw with your poetry. Is it like a way of what does it represent for you? Is it also to desacralize poetry, or to make it fun, or to make it beautiful, or?
I just think you've got to, like, you know, one thing I don't like to stay in one lane. I think, why do everything? Have fun with it. It doesn't have to just be in a book and this, like, you know, you can only read in, with in a stained glass window. It's got to be somber in a university or something. Let the work travel. You know, I can read in a bar, you know, or I can read in the church, or I can read, you know, like Harvest, you know. It's lots of different ways of using language. We use language every day, so why should it just be some serious academic experience? It can be everything.
One question I didn't ask when we were talking about social media: do you think social media, Instagram, for instance, but it could be TikTok, are the new kind of book, or book have still their place, which is a bit different from social media? You know,
it's hard for me to say it's a new book because I love books and they'll always be my first love. But I do think it's important in this day and age to have different vehicles.
Right.
Just because our brains are different. Our brains, we don't have even the same attention span. Even me as a writer and strong reader, I don't read as well as I did 10 years ago, just because I'm used to looking at shorter form content. This is unfortunate, but it can be used. You can still use it. So I think they're great for and I've seen so many poets on there who are great. I meet poets all the time just on there.
Do the comments have an impact on your writing?
You know, not me, because I think that I'm somebody who, if you say it's fantastic, is the same as if you say it's not. I can't become too invested in an outside opinion on what I do. It's too important to me. So it's lovely if you say it's nice, but these things don't permeate my being, because I'm there to tell a story. I have to just do it. So I try not to live in there. I try not to pay too much attention. I look at them sometimes, but not. So there'll be lots that I don't see.
Yeah.
Because you don't want it to affect what you do.
Yeah, because especially, I mean, when it's beautiful, it's amazing, it doesn't really affect you. But on the other side, when you have criticism, it's harder to take sometimes.
Yeah, I think it could be. And we're only human. So you don't want that to come into this sacred space of them telling you that something comes through me. I have no room to, think of an outside opinion. I just have to do it. Yeah. That's more important.
And also those people, you don't know them. So
it's
just like receiving a lot of, anonymous letters of insult and reading them. Nobody would do that.
No, exactly. That's how you have to treat it.
Do you have, Greg, to deal with the comments?
I do, I do sometimes.
That's something
depending
on hurting you, or?
It can, it's affecting. I mean, I think I'm just a human being also. So, when you read something and people are criticizing you, you're like, oh, wow, what did I do? How did I? So I had a lot actually. So
and as feeling people, as sensitive people, of course you're gonna feel something.
Yeah, and when you put yourself out there,
that's right.
That's probably what you're going to get at some point, sometimes.
Yeah. And it's very easy for somebody who's like anonymous to do that to you, who's in the public space.
Yeah. Totally, 100%.
You are also a model.
From time to time.
From time to time. Do you enjoy it? And does it intersect with your identity as a poet?
I think I'm just one person who does all these things. I think it's nice ways to do different things, because, it's so lonely, writing, and you're just, which I love because introvert. But if you're not careful, I think this solitary life, which again I love, can become another story. Like, I am just this poet that's alone. And so when I do write or I do act, I'm forced into different spaces to become a performer with my body, with like my being. And that's important too, not just one thing. So I love like an opportunity to, wear nice clothes and be glamorous sometimes, it's important for all of it as me, the person.
To feel beautiful. Yeah, also it's nice, no?
Yeah, who doesn't want to be beautiful, So,
One thing I'm wondering about that is that something that most people don't know is modeling is a lot of waiting.
Oh, God.
And so I was wondering how many of your poems or writing are while waiting, being a model.
Oh my God, so much. The majority of my work is on a plane. I love the plane because you can't do anything else, so you have to just work. So the majority of things I love.
You can watch movies.
I can watch like one, but then I'm just like, I'd rather just write something, let the hours go.
Right. So you wrote a lot on planes.
All the time. I'll be writing on a plane back here. It's my perfect like little incubator to just, and there's something about being in the air. You're closer to God maybe, I don't know. But you start having all these thoughts about your life. And so I write a lot on the plane. I write a lot of my books on planes. Oh, wow. Yes.
Do you take time to integrate every day, or planes is the moment where you integrate whatever happened before?
I do take time to integrate every day, because I think I was telling you earlier, even in somewhere like this, I go to the room regularly to re-up my social battery. So there I think I integrate and ground myself. Yeah. You're
mentioning that you're an introvert sometimes. And in the first poem, you talked about the pandemic. Where were you at the time? And as a poet, introvert, how did you cope with the pandemic? And did poetry help you?
Absolutely, it helped. I mean, I wrote a lot, and I wrote a whole book in the pandemic. It was my latest one. It was called The How, and it came out at the end of 2021. But yes, I was in New York for the first part of it, in London for the second part of it. And it was an interesting time. It's just so difficult for us collectively because we didn't know what was happening. And of course, that makes you reflect. So a lot of poetry was born. And also because it was such an online time for everyone, I got to know new poets. And like Instagram was booming at that time.
That's true.
Yeah.
New poets, what are your favorites now?
Oh my God, there are so many poets that I love. I love a poet called Nikita Gill. And I love Safia Elio, that poet as well, and Fatima Asghar. They are all poets that I came across in the pandemic and just loved reading from them. But there are so many. God, I'm a member of so many poetry Instagrams where they give me new poetry all the time.
I guess the algorithm does it.
Yeah,
works.
I love it.
That's very nice. So you mentioned your last book was The How. Can you talk to us a little bit about it?
Yes. So I wanted to do a book of poetry. And my publisher was like, okay, fine. But you do know that something happened when I started writing poetry. And this was that a lot of my readers would come to me with questions like about love and life and my advice. And I would be like, why do they want me to tell them anything? Did you not read my poetry? My poetry is all about like love ending and difficulty and alcohol and, all of these relationships that go wrong or, it was all about love. And, for some reason, I found that in the space of really kind of expansion and creativity and love and self-love, people were asking me a lot of questions. And so they said, do you not want to do a book around that? And I was like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. But something started coming to me and I started to write, not from the space of someone who knows it all, but from someone who is also trying to figure it out. And so the how is just like, what is the how? How do we get through this? How do we keep on showing up when life is difficult? How do we invite more of ourselves? How do we remember the things that we wanted to be when we were young and let go of because people told us we couldn't do it? What is the how? So the whole book is about this elusive how and lots of ways that we can self-regulate, feel our bodies and what their messages they're giving to us, and really come back into the true self, the honest self, and use it to power you in work and life and love and get back to who you are. So that's what it's about. This book came out and I was like, oh my God, what are people going to think? Why am I telling people what they already know? But every important text is just like a reminder of stuff you already know, everything. So yeah, I wrote it and that was the last book. I have a book coming out next year.
Tell us a bit.
It's a novel and it's a thriller and that is called The Catch.
A thriller?
A thriller.
Why?
You know what? So I told you that my mum passed away. She passed away some years ago when I was 23. And it was such a difficult loss. I really, really, really missed her. And the relationship with your mother is like nothing else. So from time to time, I would be like shopping and I would just like, shopping or like anywhere in different cities and different countries around the world, and I would see someone and it's not even that they looked like her, it was just like, oh wow, like I wonder if she'd look like that, maybe they were her age or her height or something. I thought, God, what would it be like for me to just see someone like her? And it kind of became a story. So in the book there are two twin girls and they lost their mother at a young age and they were fostered and adopted in two different houses. So one day when they're both 30, one of them sees who they think is their mother and this woman appears in their life, wreaks havoc, and we have to decide whether she's the mother or not. So this is what this thriller is all about, this woman coming back in their lives. The twist is that she is the same age as them, but she's identical to the pictures that they've seen of her. So it's like, is it not? How can this be? And so that's what The Catch is all about.
So you're diving into the motherhood
Yes, thing. Yeah. It's so compelling to me. Yeah,
Super
the idea of motherhood.
I had a question around the book, The How, because we are living right now, or we are going through a mental health pandemic.
Wow, yes.
And I was wondering, how do you look at, how do you see the society right now? How do you look at it?
Man, I think the thing that we're calling out for the most, I mean, there are so many things, but it's connection. It's remembering that we are more alike than not alike, because there is so much separateness now, and so much trying to witch hunt people, and trying to prove people wrong, and trying to take people down for beliefs that they have that are not in line with ours, forgetting that this world is so beautiful because we're so rich and varied. So I think the separateness is the problem. Yeah. It's also not great for mental health, feeling so isolated. So I think, the end of isolation, we need more connection and more things that draw us together, even in our differences. But this idea of homogenizing everyone and making everyone think the same is this doesn't help us. It's so boring. Yeah.
Maybe I will come to my...
Maybe it's
exactly. You're reading my notes? No, exactly. That's a perfect... the theme of Harvest is radical connection. What do you think about radical connection? What does it mean for you? And when do you feel radically connected?
Oh, wow. I feel radically connected when I make work that resonates, or when I experience work that resonates, which if you think about it, it's all the same circle, because whether you're the watcher or the person on stage, or whether you're the reader or the writer, whether you're the artist singing or the listener, it's all a big circle of connection. I also think radical connection is the only way that we're going to get through some of the great problems in the world and all of the things that are happening. So it's kind of our antidote to a lot of the poison that has appeared. So we need it. I think it's the only hope. And I think we need to begin now, and just experiences like this help me understand that some things are possible. And you can really get galvanized from just hearing one message. So imagine if we were all doing it and just lighting each other up all across the globe. That would be amazing.
Fabulous. Do you have one more question?
No,
I have the last question of this podcast, the one I'm asking to all the guests, is if you can recall a memory where you felt very connected with your family. It can be not your family if you want, but a meal, if you can if you can explain us the person, the food, the people, the atmosphere around you when you were a child.
Okay,
and you felt really connected, like a vivid memory.
I know that straight away. So my family that I grew up with is Jamaican, and at Christmas, oh my God, we would have the best food. We would have rice and peas. We would have, which is our dish in Jamaica that everyone has. We'd have our chicken, and we would have our macaroni and cheese, and just a big spread with all the best cutlery and the little flatware, the crockery that my grandma used to like with all the patterns on it, and just the uncles and cousins and everybody that would come through just to get the food as well. And that I will never forget that, and that's why I love to gather people around also for food, because my grandma taught me how to cook, so those things make me happy, and that's a vivid memory for me.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
It resonates a lot with me, actually. So I love that. Yeah.
What's your? I would like to know.
No, but we have the same.
What's your memory?
I guess we have the same background.
Yes.
So I have the same thing. I have the same memories. The big meal with all the family, 20, 30 people around the table. Totally.
Yeah.
I guess it would be a Christmas dinner for me also. With the family. With the cousins and the happy moments, and when you wait for the next day to open your presents.
And you're waiting for Santa Claus. And you try to see him.
You have a last question?
Yeah, my podcast called Vlan, VLN. It's an onomatopoeia to say slam the door to something or open the door to something. Mostly slam the door to something, to be honest.
Okay.
But I would like to know what you would like to open or slam the door to.
I would like to open the door to accepting, like really fully accepting opportunities and saying yes to things with my full self. And with that same thing, I want to slam the door to feelings of doubt or any feelings that might surface that are not true, of any unworthiness or any hesitation. I want to even go for things even more than I already do.
Right.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Yrsa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Yrsa. Thank you, Greg. It was a pleasure to have you.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Bye. Thank you, Yrsa.
Thank you.
Thanks.